Hello TWI members, in this video what I want to do is go deep on when and where to use zero stretch and the wrap matrix when you're doing interior wrap film. Now we introduced the wrap matrix and zero stretch in October of 2021, and on the forum a lot of people are asking, okay, we get it, we think it's really interesting, where can we use it in a lot of different practical applications? Now a lot of people think zero stretch and wrap matrix are just for vehicles, but they can work really well for interior. Now you think that interior wrapping film is mostly flat, and it is, but oftentimes you get really funky objects or even slight curves that zero stretch and wrap matrix can be really significantly helpful. So in this video what I want to show is 4 areas where we used zero stretch and wrap matrix in this flat in Amsterdam that made a giant difference not only in terms of quality, but lowering install times and making the wrap much easier. So with that, let's get to it. So before I show you those 4 areas where wrap matrix and zero stretch came in extremely handy for this interior wrap film in Amsterdam, what I want to give you is a quick tip, and that is before you use zero stretch and wrap matrix on any type of install, do a little test beforehand. And that involves taking a scrap of the material and shrinking it, and this will give you a good read of how much natural energy is already in the film. So I've taken a scrap, and keep in mind that direction is really important before you even begin. So there's no logo on this one, but I know that this scrap piece, the length of the roll goes this way and the width goes this way. So naturally the material will shrink most left to right. So keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to shrink this piece, and then we'll show how much stretch was naturally in the material. Then you know, is there a lot or is there a little? And then you go from there. So let's shrink it. So this is the result of doing that test before you get to wrap matrix and zero stretch. So in this case of the crocodile interior film, it shrank quite a bit. I would say between 4 to 6%. That's a lot of shrinkage, and if you don't know about zero stretch and the wrap matrix, that could be really bad. But because you do know about it, wow, this is actually quite good because the material can shrink exactly where you need it to. And before I knew about this with interior wrapping film, the sections I'm going to show you were actually quite difficult, and now they're a breeze. So let's get to the first one. Now the first area that zero stretch and the wrap matrix came in extremely handy was on this section here of the closet. Traditionally I would have used a lot of triangles, heat, and tried a little bit of cold pre-stretch, but that would have been really tricky because the wall there has a 90-degree turn, so it's hard to get the material in. So normally I'd have a little bit of excess film that way. I would have picked it up and tucked it in. And then around these areas, especially on this curve, have been really tricky to kind of get the material in there and push it in and not get a lot of wrinkles on top and bottom. But now that we have zero stretch and wrap matrix in our repertoire, here's how I did it. So what I did is I essentially wrapped this like I was doing shrinking tint on a back window. Is I took the material and I squeegeed it straight across from side to side, and then I squeegeed straight down the middle, past the raised object, and then I squeegeed horizontally here as well, all the way across. So what that naturally did, and if you're intermediate or beginner installer, you know exactly what the material did, is it really kind of bunched up high here and high here on each corner. The material just kind of picked up off the raised object. But now, I just showed you zero stretch and how much the material shrank. And what I said before I shrank it is think about how the material always shrinks lengthwise the most. So with this panel, what I did is I bridged it from top to bottom, and this means the material shrinks the most this way. Good. So by doing a H shape here and giving a lot of excess material here, I knew that I don't have to put my own energy into the film. I have 4 to 6 natural shrinkage in the film built in straight from the manufacturer. So right here I just lightly held the material away and I heated it. I didn't have to set it up at all because it shrank right to the corner. I did the same thing on each corner, and boom, it actually formed in perfectly with no stress, and I went super deep into the recessed area, and I didn't have to work hard to do it. That's the beauty of zero stretch and the wrap matrix. So in this section here, my corner game was super strong, not because I worked hard to do it, because I let the material do it itself, because I gave a good read on, boom, how much it shrank. I let it get in the right position by doing the H shape, and boom. So in a weird way in a way, I tinted this section here, and it worked great. Let me show you another area where zero stretch came in super handy. So another area where I used zero stretch and the wrap matrix was actually at the front of the closet. These 4 open areas required inlays on the mouth-like corners. So what I used to do before zero stretch and the wrap matrix is grab a scrap and just randomly cut triangles out of it and then form them in. So what I would do is I'd take the liner off heat it, kind of push it in, then do the main install. But I always kind of naturally felt that there's still a little bit of tension in the film, even with the inlay. But now with zero stretch in the wrap matrix, there's no tension in the film, and here's why. Is instead of just randomly cutting triangles off the liner, I thought, okay, this scrap piece, I want to make sure that the triangles shrink left to right. So when I cut the triangles, I made sure that it went with the length of the film. Good start. Then when I took the pieces, instead of kind of heating and forming them in, I just simply took off the liner, got it in the position I wanted to, then added heat. Because I knew that this material naturally shrinks 4 to 6%, and it shrinks in that kind of matrix shape. So actually these pieces wrap themselves, and they actually ended up going back to true zero, which was awesome. So I highly recommend on these areas doing that zero stretch and letting them naturally shrink into there. Cool stuff. So I feel like these are going to really hold strong for the long term, and the install actually went much quicker, which is super cool. So with that, let's get to the third area where zero stretch and wrap matrix came in super handy, and it's a tiny one, but a big one. The third area where zero stretch and the wrap matrix came in extremely handy was on the corners of this install on the table. Now the style of corner I chose to use was this, once the material's on the top side, I made a relief cut, I swung this side around and I cut it off about maybe a 1/4 inch around, and then I came in with this piece on top and I cut it off just short of the corner. So it has a little bit of a overlap right there, holds up really well, and because I cut this slightly short, you don't see it from this side, which is the side that most people look at, and it holds up really well. Awesome. That being said, before I knew about zero stretch and wrap matrix, I'd do this style of corner, but I always struggled with the top corner section right there. That's because interior wrapping film is generally super stiff and thick. So even with a relief cut, once you swing it around here, it generally kinks up right there in the corner. And if you've done any type of interior wrapping film, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But now that I know about zero stretch, wow, what did I do? Before making the relief cut, all I did is, because in my mind now, I know the material naturally shrinks 4 to 6%, is I just got the material to the top section here, and instead of doing like that cold pre-stretch logic where you try to hook the material yourself, I knew that the material would naturally shrink into itself, or into the corner, kind of forming it in. So all I did is I lightly held the material away and I hit it with heat, and what it did is it shrank right to the corner. Just enough where it came past the top ridge of the corner, then I made my relief cut. And I'm telling you, the difference in my corner game was dramatic. So it just took a different understanding of the film, taken 1 second to give it a kiss of heat, and it totally dramatically changed not only how it looks, but also how it holds. Awesome stuff. So zero stretch is great for corners on sharp sections like this. Now with that, let's get to the last section, and it's a fun one. So the fourth area where zero stretch and the wrap matrix came in extremely handy was around the knobs on the burner. When I was doing the countertop, I thought how cool it would be to wrap these knobs in the same material. And plus these knobs are really beat up from the previous owner. Instead of buying new ones, I thought I'll wrap them. But if I used traditional techniques with this interior wrapping film, I would have been really screwed. Why? Is because this particular film was the thickest of all the interior wrapping film used in this flat, around 10 mil thick. So if I would just kind of naturally stretch it around here and then try to work it to this back section here, and on the top I would have tons of bottle capping right now, because this has been on now for about 3 months, and it would have definitely popped out of here because the material is too thick and this object is way too curvy, especially trying to wrap on this back section. Not with zero stretch in the wrap matrix. So here's what I did. The piece that went around the main body here, I stretched it a lot. So I didn't let it just kind of sit. I really gave it some energy during the install. So what happened is, now when I added heat, it actually shrank to the backside here and laid flat. Didn't have to use adhesive promoter here at all. No stress at all. No bottle capping, it's just flat. Awesome. So that's the wrap matrix and the power of it. I'm using pyramids instead of triangles. For the top piece now, because that's going to go down and it's kind of hold on the edge right there, what I did is zero stretch beforehand. I took a scrap, shrank it, and it shrank quite a bit, and then I laid it on top. And because the piece that laid on top was recalibrated to zero before I put it on top, there's no chance of it lifting. So it looks like paint, which is awesome. So even something as complicated as this, with a super thick interior wrapping film, this calendar, man, I think this is definitely going to hold for years and look great because of zero stretch in the wrap matrix. So little subtle things that changed with zero stretch and wrap matrix on this interior film install in Amsterdam. Again, I would say it lowered my install time by about 5% overall in this entire flat, but especially for corners and objects like this and that area around the closet, boom. I sleep like a baby at night because I know those areas are going to stay flat for the long term because there's no stress and I'm taking advantage of the natural stretch in the film. Awesome stuff. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of zero stretch and the wrap matrix and where to use it with interior wrapping film. Thanks for watching.